Hello, I'm Dr. Ryan Green, co-founder and medical director of Monarch Athletic Clubs, with an esteemed guest, Miss Rachel Hirsch.
So generous.
Of Wellness Growth Ventures. For those who don't know, which is all of you listening, we bonded because we were both Lululemon ambassadors and we both come from the Midwest. And if you're not familiar with the suburbs of Chicago, it's a very special place to come from. And if you don't know, like, you obviously haven't been there, but the fact that we broke out of the Midwest,
big deal.
Yeah, some would say we are black sheep of our family because we left the Midwest.
I 100% am for so many reasons.
Yeah, so we bonded over that, and then ultimately her company Wellness Growth Ventures invested in us as we are expanding to 8 locations over the next few years. So Rachel, amongst other things, has an incredible company and a group with a podcast called the 2% Club, which we'll get into here in a second. But first and foremost, I just wanted you to introduce yourself. How did you get to the point where you made it out to LA, you got into the venture world, got into podcasting? You don't have to do it in that order, but I think stories are important because one of the quotes that I shared with our team, the last 2 all-team in-services, is from Jane Goodall, where she says, humans are essentially this unique species that has the ability, unlike any other species ever, to tell a story, to write things down, to share the information that we've learned from history, and then also give it to the next generation. And because of that, we have a moral obligation to use that information to help humanity. For me, it's health and wellness. For you, finance, investing in health and wellness. But I think stories matter. So I'd love to lead us to how we got here today.
A lot of delusion.
Nice. That helps.
I think it has to. But I always wanted to work in finance and ended up with a really traditional Wall Street background. But I was always a little bit of a crunchy hippie. So I ended up in LA by way of New York and London. I went to business school out there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you mean, like crunchy hippie?
Like, I used to wear my Toms to the trading floor, and I'd bring my kombucha that was like fermented in my own kitchen. Ooh. And my boss was like, can you put on a pair of Louboutins and like not drink that smelly thing near me?
Ah, super interesting.
Yeah, it was black sheep of Wall Street, but like in the best way, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
It's fine.
So what led you away from Wall Street?
I loved what I did. I love numbers, but I wanted to be like wellness focused,
sure.
And it wasn't a sector.
Yeah.
I would argue that I was very much like in the consumer wellness space when it was starting to blow up, call it like the Peloton era.
Yeah.
So I went to business school to try to figure out how to make this a career. And I was lucky enough that during business school, wellness started to get more notoriety. I would say we're still like in the early innings.
Sure. Very early innings.
Yes. But enough that people are starting to have conversations about it. And so I could raise a small fund that invests in the space.
Amazing. So your fund is called Wellness Growth Ventures. What do you look for when you're looking at companies? Because I feel like I get pitched all the time for 1,000 different things. And, from my perspective, it's people that want to introduce their product into our ecosystem. And I am terrible at saying no. Like, I have people pleasing issues.
Because you're from the Midwest.
I'm working through the trauma. But I've found myself in positions where I'm like, I'm having this conversation because, so-and-so said so-and-so, and I don't want to disappoint that person. So I'm going to say yes, even though like I don't really believe in it or whatever. So from, a Wellness Growth Venture standpoint, and what you do with your company, like, what are you looking for, especially now when, like, you're a smaller fund and arguably, you don't have, massive
totally
VC money yet. So you have to make strategic decisions
for sure
because you have people that you need to pay back.
I need all my companies to win.
Correct.
Well, we'll do seed through Series A. So I won't do pre-revenue companies, which is easy then to knock out a whole category. We have minimum revenue threshold, so call it 3 million ARR-ish. And it always comes down to the founder. Like where we invest is so early that you're going to have to pivot so many times before you really hit your stride. And so I'm betting on the ferociousness, honestly, of the founder, and their ability to get up after they fall down 100 times a day. So there's an interesting balance, I would say, right now between what makes money, i.e. gummies, and real wellness.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting line to have to balance because I have a fiduciary duty to return capital to my LPs, and yet gummies make a lot of money and are not wellness. So it's an interesting dynamic that I'm learning to thread.
Do you ever, so you have a huge presence online. I'm going to let you introduce it so I don't screw anything up other than the 2% Club. But like, what are all the various different channels? Because you are out there all the time. I've been on your podcast. True. You said you wanted to be on a more professional podcast, so now we're here today, which is awesome. But like, what are the various different ways that you are getting involved in sharing this information? And then I'll follow up with another question.
Okay, so Wellness Growth Ventures is the majority of my time. I happened to start like a mom and pop yoga studio during COVID, so she's another avenue. And then my job with Wellness Growth Ventures is to meet brilliant people in the wellness space. And I'm hyper introverted, so I wanted to introduce everyone. I threw everyone in a Slack. My friend made it more of it's like a whole organization now where we pop up. Next week I'm flying to Austin and we have 75 people, a whole waiting list. It's like people are really ready to engage with each other, and there aren't loads of these organizations for people that work in wellness, specifically women. So that's the 2% Club, which is 2% of VC funding goes to women, 2% of startups make it beyond the $1 million threshold, so it's inclusive and slightly exclusive. And so then that exists on Slack, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, IRL. So we're all over. And
okay, so from there, what have you learned in terms of like I guess I'd say, what are you betting on over the next few years in the wellness space based on what you've seen, what you've heard, people that you've met within these experiences? Because like, I too am extremely introverted. Like small talk is one of the things that I just try to avoid at all cost. And yet we have to continue to go to these things. And to your point, I'm like, it's gummies, it's cookies, it's supplements, it's drinks. I went, eudaimonia, which was an incredible, did you go? Mm-mm. Okay, you should definitely go. But
so many people.
Insane. 4,000 sessions over 3 days or something like that. But like, the exposition studio is like, you could walk out there with a year's worth of beverages and food that like it's crazy, and there's all out there. So to your point, like I understand why like 2% of people actually make it, because I'm just like, there's so much noise in the space. Totally. So, where do you see the industry going over the next few years? Like what is really big for you? And I was going to say, because in the Midwest, it'll be there in 20 years from now, but so like they can get prepped for it.
Well, interestingly, okay, so I have something you're not going to love, but it's about GLP-1s and that proliferation and that in conjunction with menopause. But the majority of new GLP-1 users are actually like Midwest folk. I'm sure you love this.
Yeah.
But because it's so prolific, I think there are like secondary and tertiary markets to that I think are pretty interesting.
Super.
But I think what we hear the most is that there's so many of the same needs in terms of like women across the board have gut issues, and our PCOS is just like a blanket statement. Totally. It's not everyone's PCOS issue, and potential cause and or solution could be vastly different, yet it's just all PCOS.
Yeah. Or SIBO. Everyone has SIBO.
Right. And so I think we're looking for more of, and I think I sent you a product recently that is arguably more scientific, yet the messaging was not consumer enough and no one understood what it was. So that's this interesting new path of, can you make something super scientific that does have efficacy interesting enough to the people who are taking gummies? Because the reality of gummies is it works because of adherence. It doesn't work from an efficacy perspective. And how do you sort of fix that?
Yeah. Because you made an interesting point at a talk we were at recently, which is like everyone has a clinical trial, everyone has a study, and most people like they don't know. So they're just going to go with what's marketed well, what's branded well. The GLP-1, for the record, I'm not anti.
Okay.
I think, we've been playing around with microdosing for people because it's available via high quality compounding pharmacies. And we are seeing, again, in like N of 1 cases, vasomotor symptoms associated with menopause disappearing. Obviously, alcohol cessation becomes significant. Food noise, all the like the buzzwords of the microdose program, and we're seeing it. We also just happen to have people built into our system, so like we know what their body composition looks like. We know what they're doing, because muscle mass loss is a huge issue for 1,000 different reasons. But I have switched my opinion simply because I'm like, yeah, man, like there's so much more to behavior than just they're hungry, right? Like I think that's another huge thing that we're moving into here on, like trauma and emotional aspects, and like the epigenetic impact of like, wow, some of these behaviors have been like ingrained for generations. Can we use these molecules to manipulate patterns so that you can break out of the behavior? And I think that's what's the interesting part, where people are like, oh, I'm not doing this as often when I go out for dinner. And then 3 months later, they're just like, okay, I've learned how to function in small talk experiences without constantly drinking. I was thinking about my college experience. I'm like, I just drank because like that's what everyone was doing, and it allowed me to pass the time from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. I didn't like it, but like that's just what everyone did. So I'm not anti-GLP-1. The question is going to be like, how does it come down between big pharma and compounding pharmacies and access and things like that?
Not to monopolize, and you can totally tell me to stop, but can we talk HRT for a second?
Yes, please.
Because part of the reason I think there's such a need for GLP-1s is because HRT basically is impossible to get.
Yeah.
Are you pro HRT, and why aren't more compounding pharmacies doing it? Like, why is there just such a gap, and why is it the hottest thing you can't find? No pun intended.
So hormone replacement therapy is going through a renaissance as we have navigated through the Women's Health Initiative. It's not a fiasco, but it was just a significant misinterpretation of data that unfortunately led to a lot of women for a very long time suffering through this hormone transition, which 100% of women will experience. The difficult part with HRT is we are still very early clawing back at the damage that was done. So you still have practitioners that trained, and I'll add some flavor to that. Like when I was a fellow at Mayo Clinic, they did a study in their Mayo Clinic journal, which they have like their in-house proceedings, that showed about like 75% of studies in the New England Journal from a certain period of time, like 2000 to 2010 or something like that, had by 2013 been proven ineffective, no longer standard of care. But 75 to 80% of physicians didn't know that because there's just such a volume of information.
Crazy.
You can't keep up with it. So they basically said, well, I'll do what's considered standard of care based on open evidence or up to date, whatever the repositories are. I'm not going to change because that's how I was trained, or I just simply didn't know that this new whatever was available. And I don't think the public knows that. And it's not like the clinicians are acting in bad faith. It's just simply like the information's coming out at a mile a minute. So the HRT piece, I think we have a generation of clinicians that were scared into like never talking about it. And now they just haven't revisited it because it's been 20 years. The other part is these hormone replacement therapies are bioidentical. You're not going to find them in CVS, Walgreens, or whatever, so you have to find a compounding pharmacy. Difficult to do because certain compounds require sterile compounding, which means the pharmacies have to have certain levels of regulation, oversight. Some don't. And like if you're talking about Midwest, right? Like how many compounding pharmacies? I can't think of a single compounding pharmacy in Wheaton, Illinois. Like, granted, I wasn't really like thinking about it back then,
Right.
but basically you went to Jewel, you went to Dominic's, you went to like Throwback. Most people don't
I was
know
going to say it
this.
doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah. And that was it. So I just think they don't necessarily have access to it. And we are talking about it because on the coast, it's hot and you have access to everything. But in the middle, where the majority of people are, they're just hearing about it. And then when they hear about it, they don't know where to go. The other part is there are ridiculous rules in terms of like what you're allowed to send across state lines in terms of like pharmacy, prescription, licensing. You want to talk about a revolution? Like, I trained med school Denver, residency Dartmouth, fellowship Mayo Clinic, fellowship University of Arizona. I went to 4 different states
You're
to
really
get my
dumb.
education. And now I have to go to every state again and ask for permission to practice. You know what I'm saying? Like, driver's license good in all 50 states. But when it comes to medicine,
Right.
there's all these weird rules. Like, so, in order to get hormone therapy to the masses, you either have to follow like a Hims and Hers that's going to spend tens of millions of dollars to do all the licensing and have all the like the various different logistics, or you're going to have a mom and pop spot that's in a neighborhood somewhere that basically just serves a small subset of people because the rules are just like too oppressive to function. So like, I think HRT is incredibly important. I think testosterone optimization is incredibly important, especially for women, but definitely men. The estrogen progesterone one is going to take more time because there's more to it. Are you 10 years within perimenopause? Do you have a uterus? What's your cancer history? Like all those kind of things. Okay. Testosterone's pretty straightforward. The other ones are very effective, but they do require some level of medical oversight. It's not the same as like peptides or something like that where you have fewer contraindications regardless of like, is this FDA approved or not? But I do think hormone therapy is incredibly important, and I think hormone therapy is going to be even more important because I am seeing men and women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s with testosterone levels 50% or below what they would have been 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Why?
Lifestyle, sleep, movement,
Crazy.
body composition,
Why?
what we're exposed to in terms of chemicals and compounds in our environment. The other big one, birth control. Brutal. Yeah, like what I'm seeing for girls and women who have been on birth control for a long period of time is like very difficult hormone optimization or just general function. I was gonna say metabolism, but that's a totally different story, which is outside of here. So I do think hormone therapy is going to be a big one, but just because it is a medication, like it's not going to be super mainstream unless you have a small amount of companies that have the money and the legal and the.
But there's a world where a Hims and Hers starts doing it, no?
They're doing it. Oh. Yeah, they're already doing it. Yeah, so they're doing some hormone therapies. You've got groups like Life Force that are doing telemedicine in almost all 50 states, I believe. But it's tough because the rules change all the time. And like during the pandemic, you could do a telemedicine visit with a clinician that wasn't in your state, and then that's changing. So it's not that it should be difficult from like an actual execution and fulfillment standpoint. It's just a state-by-state legal
I think
issue.
I just struggle why GLP-1s are so accessible. Like, I could get 20 delivered to right here, right now, but I couldn't get an HRT if, every compounding pharmacy is, high majority are out of them.
Yeah.
It's just confusing.
I think you don't need the same level of oversight from a physiologic standpoint. Like, if your testosterone levels go crazy high, you're going to have a problem. If your GLP-1 levels go too high, you get nauseous and I shouldn't do that dose. But you're not going to have potential mania or what I'm saying? If you mess around with your estrogen levels, for instance, women with PMDD, all that is just a shifting of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. But some women have really serious issues, potentially suicidal thoughts if it's really bad. So that's where you got to be careful with hormones, because hormones affect the physical body, but also the brain. GLPs is just don't lose too much weight, don't lose too much muscle mass. So it's
Different.
Relatively a lower risk profile.
Okay, thank you.
So back to you, and from a WGV standpoint, Wellness Growth Ventures, Do you have anything when you're looking at brands right now that you're just like, that is a non-negotiable, not touching it?
Yeah, but you're going to get me in trouble.
Nope.
I think if you're starting with a gummy, it's a non-starter for me, just because, again, I have to like thread that line of wellness versus what sells. I'm not hyper interested in beverages, transparently. I think like the winners are win big, but I think it's really, there's very low barrier to entry in terms of beverages, so that's why you'll see a lot more enter in that market. We're seeing all different kinds of like peptide science-based skincare, and everyone, like we mentioned, everyone has a clinical trial, and yet that's not, like they all can't be this amazing fixable. So I take all of that with a grain of salt. We just did 4-wall, so we're a little 4-wall heavy at the minute. I'm not the most interested in hardware in terms of wearables. Yeah. I have a flousser though. I don't know if you floss like a religiously.
Twice a day.
Okay, I'm like a religious flosser.
I think oral health is, other than mental health, it's the next revolution.
And flosser with this thing totally changed my flossing career. I'm obsessed with it. But outside of that, I think hardware, especially in like the health tech space, doesn't do it for me. Yeah. Like it's just not connected enough to my actual life. And so until then, it's just not super interesting.
What's the biggest thing that you're seeing is like going to be the next GLP-1, if you can pick on that, over the next 5 to 10 years?
I mean, I think we're honestly still in the early innings of GLP-1s. But I think we're going to see, again, like the second and third markets to that be massive. So I'm dying for someone to come out with like a Alex Earl's version of Ensure. So think like shelf stable, but actually good for you, something that like GLP-1ers can just like drink as a shake. Gets all of their nutrients, doesn't make them nauseous, etc. But shelf stable is the key. And I think like skincare around that with like the sagginess and the wrinkles, whether that be through like a extended proliferation of plastic surgery or lasers or whatnot. I mean, even Glederma, everyone's investing more in that, taking away from cosmetic, color cosmetics, which I think is interesting. This is maybe niche, but I think next year specifically, fiber is on the rise again. For sure. But fiber is different than protein. Fiber can't be you can't have a fiber drink in the morning. You can't have like, but all the different fibers that like, think about how much people are eating protein popcorn. If you had that much fiber all the time, like you'd be in the bathroom a lot. Yeah, but I mean, you'd probably have healthy bowel function, but the amount of like gut health issues that I'm seeing, and I think fiber is so critical for so many other things other than just gut health, cholesterol metabolism, blood sugar control. Like we were not meant to eat food. Most of the food that humans ate was high fiber. Like we're meant to eat that. But I think what's interesting is right now, my dad, for example, his doctor just recently told him to start taking Metamucil. That's not clean. There's no like that should not be the answer. Stuff. Yeah. And so trying to figure out what is actually good, clean fiber and what can heal your gut and give you actual gut health versus just Metamucil. Like that's not it. Sure. Like when my mom was sick in the hospital, it was Ensure. Like, and she was just like, pump me full of this so I can get out of here. I'm like, it's like muscle milk, but in the hospital. I was like, this is just not that good. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm riding mushrooms until we heal the world. I bought stock because in Canada there's like some public companies, and I was like the worst. It was minimal dollars, but it's like the worst stock decisions I've ever made. But I believe in it so deeply that I was like, I have to commit to the cause. Yeah, 1,000%. As we wrap up, I have 2 final questions, and then one is like, if you had a mentorship group of young women going through B school, getting into the world of venture capital, traditionally male dominated, any like words of advice for them as they're potentially thinking about starting a fund, joining a fund, doing something that's not so traditional finance? Not to like plug myself, but I would say join the 2% Club just because it's such a specific group of women. And I have never been a part of a group of women who are so eager to help one another. And it's sort of, because most of our events are sweaty, it takes away a lot of the ego. And I think you're starting to see some real authenticity in how people are showing up, instead of saying like, oh, it was the easiest thing to raise $10 million. It's like, let me tell you, it took me 4 years to raise $10 million. Amazing. So. Awesome. I think that's a good one. And then the final question that I always ask is,
you do what you do, you're helping people, but ultimately I think all humans were sent here for a greater purpose, which is, whatever that might be. Mine is, helping us understand that healing the body opens doors for anything that you could possibly want in life. What do you hope people say about Rachel Hirsch when you are reaching your last few?
This is such a big question.
Huge
I almost am upset with you that I wasn't given this.
Oh, I can't give you, but because what I want is your gut answer more than anything. I don't want you to think about it because you already know.
I don't know that I know. I think I want to make an impact in a good way. I know that much. And I genuinely do believe it's through Wellness Growth Ventures. I think I've taken a path that wasn't necessarily paved for me, and I chopped down trees to make it happen. And
hell yeah.
Hopefully that sets a precedent that you don't need to take the yellow brick road. You can make your own yellow brick road.
Absolutely. Before we sign off, I think you said it without saying it, but I have a framed quote in my home, George Bernard Shaw, that says, "The reasonable man tries to bend himself to fit the world. The unreasonable man tries to bend the world to fit himself." So all progress depends on the unreasonable man. And the path you're, laying is, on the surface, people will be like, that is wildly unreasonable. 5'2", 100 pounds, going to battle with titans of the finance industry, just as what we're doing here with Monarch, which is no one's done what we've done. But that's what the world needs. Otherwise, we keep replaying the same record and we make zero progress. So I'm grateful to have you part of the Monarch family. I'm grateful for you sharing your story with everyone. And for those who are listening, Wellness Growth Ventures, the 2% Club, the mighty Rachel Hirsch. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan.